give the floor to share the screen to Michela. Meanwhile, I welcome to this final webinar of the final event of Cluster 2.0. Cluster 2.0 was a very interesting project, and it started 3 years ago. It was a really tough project and very interesting, very fruitful. You may have participated in the previous webinars that introduced the main topics of cluster, the main results, cloud data sharing, slot booking up, the new modular loading unit, that is something physical that cluster brings to the logistic world, the logistic cluster collaboration, the cloud-based platform collaboration in intermodal cluster. And we are here at the ending workshop that is focused on the impacts. The title, the official title is Key Drivers for the European Green Deal. What does it mean? It means that Cluster 2.0 was a project long enough to be monitored. The performance was monitored at a concrete level, on field, during the activities of the Living Lab, with very interesting results that my colleague Michela will present in some minutes. Cluster 2.0 can bring a wider impact to the society and to the economy. And of course, it would address the Green Deal objectives that are all focused on reducing the carbon footprint of transport and logistics. Cluster 2.0 has something to say, and Milos Milenkovic from Zaragoza Logistics Center will talk about it. Paolo Paganelli of BlueGreen has passed 3 years in drafting a concrete business model to bring Cluster 2.0 innovation to the market, with some very interesting results, of which Paolo will talk about. Finally, we will have a presentation by Stefano Persi of Mosaic Factors that will talk about future challenges and opportunities of Cluster 2.0 innovation. It will be the occasion to close this webinar and to introduce the question and answer session. Your question will be very welcome, and we are ready, me and my colleagues, to answer and to liaise with you here and in the future. Michela, the floor is yours for the first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. So, good afternoon, everybody. I will just go through the first slide to say a few words on Cluster 2.0 project, just to set the scene. So, as Carlo said, the main proposition fostered by the project has been the importance of both collaboration and pooling of freight demand in order to improve the utilization of intermodal services. That's the reason why within Cluster 2.0, it has been taken advantage of different concepts for exploiting the potentiality of intermodal transport. Namely, we had the so-called cluster community system that has been developed within the Living Lab 1, aiming at providing full visibility and operation management capabilities in all the terminals in cluster, so functioning as a connector among the different subsystems. Then, within the Living Lab 2, there was the development and implementation of the massification methodology that aimed to generate collaboration and community building among different stakeholders, such as shippers, terminal operators, and rail operators. Then we had the quick check tool to improve the visibility on transportation flows, the X Intermodal tool to enhance the visibility on rail connection, and finally, the development of the so-called slot booking app for the air cargo logistics, allowing different actors of the air cargo supply chain to plan, execute, and track their shipments thanks to a data sharing platform. And finally, in the framework of the Living Lab 3, we had the design and the development of an innovative handling technology that is the new modular loading unit. So the assessment of the Living Lab has then been performed by taking into account three main elements. The first one has been the process analysis, which considers how the work has been performed in each activity, also defining the key technical factors such as the time spent, the effort spent, and the operational timing. Then there has been the so-called outcome measurement that outlines the methods to collect, analyze, and validate the measurements of both quantitative and qualitative indicators that has been selected, by also defining the thresholds of these indicators. And finally, the observational system, which defines the actors affected by logistics, environmental, and socioeconomic effects brought by the project. So in order to define the 34 key performance indicators that have then been used to assess the project, we started from the main impact areas identified from the project beginning that serve to bundle each indicator into one of these areas. This allowed to draft a preliminary list of indicators customized for each Living Lab, which have then been discussed and also consolidated through an interactive process with the Living Lab's responsible partners in order to identify not only the indicators, but also the targets, the scale, and the measurement methods. Hence, the final consolidated set of 34 KPIs resulted to be slightly different from the original list. This is due to the fact, for example, that in some cases it happened that the measurements of the original indicators revealed to be hardly feasible, or targets had to be reconsidered somehow, or in other cases, the follow-up of the Living Lab activities suggested that the identification of additional indicators should be needed. So as the three Living Labs had different but complementary objectives, also the impact areas addressed by each Living Lab resulted to have some differences. In particular, we had that the Living Lab 1 focused on the increase of added value for hubs, the improvement of door-to-door logistics performances, the increase on intermodality, and a reduction of both land use and emissions. On the other hand, Living Lab 2 was mainly devoted to foster the resources sharing for generating logistics clusters with strong impact on local economies, and also to having less congestion and emission, other than a better door-to-door logistics performance and better intermodality as the Living Lab 1. Finally, Living Lab 3 was instead mainly oriented towards a more efficient good handling and as well as improved door-to-door logistics performance. So for what concerns the Living Lab 1, we achieved great results. For instance, we had a 12.5% of increase in activities implemented by the terminal operators for the management of the proximity terminal network and the related ICT solutions. Additionally, we had also a decrease of around 25% in emissions saved on current rail transport activities, and a growth of around 30% of intermodality managed freight in the clusters, namely plus 5% in road traffic and 25% in rail traffic. In Living Lab 2, interesting results have been gained considering the high increase of lanes included in the X-Intermodal tool, together with a good decrease in both CO2 emissions and also congestion as a result of volumes that has been or shifted to intermodal solution or thanks to a bundling in the same round trip. Moreover, we had an increase in the efficiency of ground handler in terms of time required for terminal operations, and also waiting time in terminals was decreased, together with a cost reduction achieved thanks to the slot booking app. Concerning the Living Lab 3, the test performed on the new modular loading unit show notable savings in terms of handling time and picking time, and also the time spent for truck loading and unloading, both in case of pallet NMLU and bottom per NMLU, resulted to be so significantly less than the business as usual. Finally, the use of the innovative NMLU brought also an increase in both loading capacity and volume weight utilization of trucks, together with a considerable time saved of cross-docking. So if we want to summarize the main issues that the project, the Cluster 2.0, has tackled, we can affirm that thanks to the connectivity and the visibility of intermodal services in place, the project provided through, for instance, the cluster community system and more coordinated terminals and hubs that could be a reality. And this is also confirmed, for example, by the low percentage of unexpected delays in rail connection registered after the cluster community system implementation. Also, the need of consolidating freight and increasing bundling has been addressed with a good effect, as demonstrated, for instance, by the results of the massification workshops and also a more efficient goods handling thanks to the new modular unit system. Moreover, the improved visibility on existing transport flows that has been provided by the Quick Check tool, together also with the existence of a potential for a shift to intermodality, provided the concrete examples on how we can overcome barriers that are preventing the use of multimodal solutions. Then the new concept of NMLU has showed rather significant potential to cover existing gaps among different transport units, being able so to decrease time required for terminal operations and the waiting time in terminals. Finally, both slot booking app and NMLU supported an increase in management capacity of terminals and hubs by improving the efficiency of ground handler and also goods handling. So we can affirm that Cluster 2.0, through its 3 living labs, has contributed to improve the supply chain performance for both shipper side and logistic operators. Thanks.
Thank you, Michela. As you could have seen, those indicators, this performance was measured on field. And especially for the NMLU, we are confident that Cluster 2.0 will bring a significant improvement of performance in the warehouse management, but also in the intermodal chain. And let's not forget the added value that the terminal management that was developed in Living Lab 1 in Bologna is the proof that collaboration between terminals and between terminals and rail operators can bring concrete results also in terms of terminal management and reduction of delay, and so efficiency in the entire intermodal chain, even the long distance one. I'd like to give the floor to Milos Milenkovic that will talk about the wider impact of Cluster 2.0 innovation. Thank you.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
With the window in the middle, if you could please scroll. Okay, now it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, just a moment.
I could also, yes, now it's perfect. Thank you.
So once again, I'm Milos Milenkovic. I'm the member of the team from Zaragoza Logistics Center, charged for the assessment of the wider impact of Clusters 2.0 based innovations. As you already heard from my colleagues, so this project is very rich of innovations of different kinds. So we have organizational, like massification methodology, hardware innovations like container mover, for example, or NMLUs, and also software innovations like cluster community system, like slot docking applications, Intermodal, and etc. So for sure, a lot of innovations and a huge impact, which is expected and already realized by the implementation of these innovations. Let's. I will, in short, explain what was the aim of the work in this task and the methodological framework that we followed. Then I will, let's say, pass through to all the groups of partial innovations related to different aspects of the Clusters 2.0 project. So we have intra-network aspect, then we have inter-network aspect, so building the network of clusters on the EU level, and also supporting NMLU solutions and transshipment, horizontal transshipment technology. So actually the aim was to make a strategic assessment of the innovations from the perspective of socio-economic and environmental effects on local and as well as on a global scale, since different innovations are, let's say, target different scales. Some innovations are related to warehouses and terminals. Some other innovations cover a broader area, like massification, for example. The methodology we followed is actually is illustrated on this figure. So we have the measurements of the main KPIs. Then we made a correlation of these KPIs with the main macroeconomic variables, and of course environmental impact. So turnover, employment, salaries, gross operating surplus, gross value added. What is the impact actually of these innovations on the main macroeconomic variables from the aspect of let's say direct beneficiary of the innovations, and also from the aspect of a regional aspect actually. Then in the last stage, which is still ongoing activity, we are trying to make a scaling up, or let's say to level all the innovations, since, as I mentioned, some are related to a meso level, some other to a micro level, and we want to bring all the innovations to the same level, and that is a global EU scale level. When we consider, for example, intra-cluster level, as Michela mentioned, there are a lot of effects that we actually realized from the intra-cluster related innovation. So the most important output is actually is a higher level, since we have a coordination and collaboration between the actors that resulted in let's say in an increase in freight volumes, which means a higher level of activities of the cluster based firms. And also, of course, that means the direct effect related to their results in terms of turnover, in terms of gross value added, and also the results for their suppliers. So that means that the higher level of activity, the better results of the companies based in cluster also have their own effects on the suppliers. That means the companies in the proximity of the cluster, and of course that are actually regional effects, which are reflected also in induced component, which is related to the salaries and wages of the people directly and indirectly involved with the activities in the cluster. Also, shift to intermodal, we have decrease of logistics costs. So that means that prices of the goods and services of those companies located in the cluster are, let's say, have a positively impacted. So that means increase in production and attraction of the clusters, of the logistic clusters. So there is a potential for growing up the number of the companies within the cluster, and of course the higher impact of the cluster within the region. One important aspect of let's say rail transport is this is recovering of SVL, single wagon load traffic, very important, especially for those market segments or those companies which are not able to fulfill or to generate enough volume for block trains. So, and also for those segments like automotive, which are not very, let's say, which are actually traditional users of road transport. So we have increased freight activities, which means also increased volume of freight handled in terminals, which impacts, as we noticed from the KPI measurements, in a higher number of employees, and also a higher turnover for terminals, since there is a higher volume of work in the terminals. When we look into the CO2 emissions, of course, the focus was on CO2 emissions, so let's say air pollution, besides the other effects like congestion cost, accidents, and etc. In some innovations, we also have the outputs regarding the congestion costs. In any case, these are very let's say promising results regarding the impact of these intra-cluster related initiatives on CO2 emissions. So we have dynamics of from 2018 to 2019, and let's say very positive impact on CO2 emissions, which is also aligned with current strategies for like a Green Deal decarbonizing the transportation sector. Then we have inter-cluster, let's say, based innovations. So we have a massification, a comprehensive methodology supported by the X-Intermodal and quick check tool for let's say finding the potential for collaboration and joining the cargo freight bundling between the shippers in order to justify the establishment of strong links between the clusters, rail especially, and also for increasing the efficiency of the road transport. So we have also very promising results, which are actually, of course, massification initiative is still ongoing. So there is the effect, the total effect will depend on the number of first on addressing the main challenges that exist. Actually, this is let's say an initiative which requires a lot of engagement and a lot of effort from all the actors within the transport chain. So from the side of supply and from the side of the demand, of course. What is the most important is that it will generate a lot of significant effects for the of course in terms of the costs of transportation and logistics, which will reflect then, which will actually have their let's say impact on the level of the production and on the cost of the production. Also, what is building the strong links between the clusters also means that we are collaboration means that we are impacting on economy of density, bringing let's say building the longer links, strong links between the clusters means also economy of scale, means also let's say decreasing average total cost of transportation. Also, load factors tend to be higher on longer journeys, for example. So massification also implies easier way for making or establishment block trains, for example. Regarding the environmental effects, based on the pool of shippers, the testings were done, and it was concluded that 12,000 of round trips could be eliminated, which also the loading capacity of the road transport could be increased for 15%. So significant also CO2 emission saved. Then regarding the congestion costs, very important component that has a significant impact on the supply chains. So we have according to this calculation, we have actually 1.5 million euros on a testing case of savings in congestion costs. Then we have the second aspect of this inter cluster related innovations, and that is actually air cargo supply chain and improvement of performances in the sense of synchronization between the requests from for cargo handling from the aspect of the demand, so freight forwarders and trucking companies, and on the other side the resources of the ground handlers. So also very important and significant aspect for air cargo, for improvement of the efficiency of air cargo supply chains. So we have logistical cost savings, which also positively impact on production level. We have also high visibility and reliability, which has a positive impact on inventory carrying costs, which are also, let's say, an important component of the total costs. Then we have a positive impact on ground, let's say, improved time performances of ground handlers. So that means a positive impact for the cargo airports and their of the productivity of their operations. Then we have average waiting time decreased, which also improves the productivity of trucking companies, actually trucks and truck drivers. Of course, micro level, which is which means the level of the one cargo airport, can be translated to the macro level, and of course the total impact on the global level will actually depend on the possibility and the potential for the implementation of this innovation to the other cargo airports. Of course, that is something that we are working on. Then we have the third aspect of the innovations, which is related and supports the previous two, and that it is related to the new modular loading units and also horizontal transshipment technology. Of course, these innovations were tested on different, let's say, use cases. So on warehouses, then we have also the intermodal transport chain. What was the main benefit considering the warehouse? We have very significant handling time reduction, since NMLUs are of higher capacity. They can carry 4 pallets, for example. We have a very let's say a maximum load utilization of the trucks, which is also very important aspect and very important benefit of using the NMLUs. On the other side, we have a higher space requirement for handling the NMLUs in comparison with the existing system. So let's say that some benefits can be outbalanced with some other, let's say, like additional space requirements. So we need to try to let's say assess actually what is the final result. Since as it is written here, the warehouse space also has a significant impact on the cost per order. Then, of course, improved warehouse activities, significant impact on the warehouses, and also on the level of the supply chain, which is infected, or let's say which is passing through the warehouse. The impact on the logistic cluster depends on the number of the warehouses that are using the technology, of course. Regarding, of course, we have induced impacts in any of these innovations. We are also considering the induced impact, or let's say a positive impact on salaries and wages of the employees, and all those which are directly or indirectly involved in the let's say logistic cluster activities. Also related to use case intermodal, what is a very important, significant reductions regarding the total kilometers in the transport chain. We have reduction in cross-docking and bundling time. Also, we have a redesign of the supply chain. That means that with using the NMLUs, we can avoid, for example, passing through and handling of shipments in the warehouses and distribution centers, which significantly impacts on let's say the performances of the supply chain, on the lead time, and of course on the costs. So the measurements were resulted in 11 to 43% of total time savings in one milk run by using the NMLUs. Also, of course, the implications of lead time reductions are broad, so increased cash flow in general due to the increased order fulfillment.
Excuse me, Milos, we have only few minutes if we want to leave room
yes,
to the other speakers.
Yes, just what is very important to mention is a container mover and comparison with the existing technologies, right, like reach stacker, for example. It is, let's say, a horizontal transshipment technology, which can be mounted on chassis and provides significant reductions in terms, for example, it has a cost decrease, so operational cost decrease. Then what is very important in terms of environmental impact, this is a relation between CO2 and load factor. As we can see, there is let's say, a correlation. So we have, with increasing of the load factors, we have decreasing of the CO2 emissions and significant effects which are actually proven and obtained by the NMLUs. Also, regarding the container mover, 60% of less surface to operate. Also, it is not needed asphalt; it is needed concrete, which is very important from the aspect of CO2 emissions. Fuel costs are 66% lower than for the reach stacker. So that's in general more or less. Also, as I mentioned, redesigned supply chain, 40 to 50% less kilometers for a milk run operations. So in general, that's actually a lot of effects and for the clusters 2.0 based innovations. Thank you.
Thank you, Milos. Thank you for this big bunch of results that demonstrates the wider impact, that the impact of cluster 2.0 is really wider, and that's to be exploited with a proper business model, of which Paolo Paganelli of BlueGreen will talk about now. Paolo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlo, for this introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. So our role in the project was exactly that of trying to find viable business models for the clusters 2.0 innovations. And we had quite a bunch of innovations, also the way to validate them from the business point of view. So I will explain quickly what approach we have taken, some highlights of the three main business models that were validated in the living labs, and an overview of the exploitation plans of the different cluster solutions. So the approach was not just that of studying new business models and writing down them on paper using the usual tools. Everybody knows the business modeling frameworks for Osterwalder and such. Of course, we did that. We tried to find models that suited all the involved stakeholders in using and deploying each of the solutions. Try to find the way for them to generate value through these solutions, but also we focused on the key assumptions that underpin each business model. So what were the key hypotheses that our partners made to actually build these business models? They think that this will drive the solution on the market. And since we had the living labs, we focused on living lab results to validate these assumptions too. So to see whether these models are viable in light of the results that we could gather from the living labs. So looking at the three living labs, we have three main business models. First one is for the CLACS. CLACS is a cluster community system piloted in the living lab here in Italy, between Bologna and Trieste. It is a very ambitious system that wants to link all the main actors in the cluster and also make a match between demand and offer of logistics services in the cluster. So allowing to make load balancing, load optimization, and to have a better distribution of cargo and logistics services in the cluster. That's all very well. This is based on a web platform, and of course the business model is a platform business model. That's very well known in the literature. It's one of the first examples that we find in all the texts, and it's also very popular. Everybody, well, we know many platforms, but unfortunately we also know of few platforms that succeeded, because platform problem is that the value of the platform itself is in the population of users that are using it. So for example, if I have a marketplace, the value for the buyers is the population of vendors is well as also, and so both vendors and sellers must be on the platform. So it's sort of a chicken and egg problem. In the CLACS case, we have such a problem, and it's quite important that this is faced, because in the cluster we have a variety of stakeholders that, for the CLACS to be valuable, must be all of them present in the platform. So they must all accept the platform and find value in that. So we did identify a number of assumptions that were tested based on living lab data, and this allowed us to try some conclusions. As I said, this is a very complex platform, so the variety of actors, shippers, logistics service providers, terminal managers, and so on, is quite important. So the key assumption is that the platform can be populated, so that the users will want to be on it. A survey was made on the cluster users, and we got positive response. But of course, this was still a response on paper. They also will have to change the way they make business, the way they book and pay for logistics services, and switch from normal nowadays long-term contracts to more short-term relations. So it's quite a change in their business, and also they're declared to be willing to do that. But it is very important, if we actually want to look at the next steps, that an MVP, a minimum viable product, is built out of this platform that nowadays is still not yet open to all the users in the clusters. It's not open on the market. Such a minimum viable platform which is open to unknown users is needed to test whether these assumptions are true, are validated, because so far we don't know. We just have interviewed the users, but we don't know whether anybody from the market will jump on the platform, and we don't know whether they will pay for the fees. So even the economic viability has been tested on the data we had, but it is not tested on the real market. The other solution we have already heard about is an animal use that makes a lot of sense in terms of allowing load optimization to better combine the load units on containers and trailers, and this logistically makes a lot of sense. But of course, it's quite complicated to apply, because adopting an animal use means to change the entire supply chain. So it has an impact on all the actors, the shippers, the logistics service providers, the terminals, and it has an impact on the hardware. So there are huge investments involved. So our first assumption to be validated, of course, that there is a convincing return on investment from these investments. And so we focused the Living Lab validation on the ROI. And also we focused on how you can acquire customers for an MLUs. Who are these customers, and how you can join them and convince them. The business model is a more traditional project business model. Actually, you have to find a suitable customer and sell them a supply chain redesign project, a very huge project there. They use an MLUs to change the supply chain. The ROI is there, but such a customer is quite difficult to find. Only the huge retailers or manufacturers that actually control large supply chains have the bargain power on the service providers, on the suppliers, to actually push them to make such a project. So it's quite complex. The ROI is also quite huge, and as a result from the Living Lab validation data, there are documents where we present this data. But there is one thing, this is a shared ROI. Yeah, it means that we have a return, but we have it if we both make investments. For example, to have the return on my warehouse, I have to change the gates, but even the logistics service providers have to change trailers. If both make the investments, then they have a ROI. So there is a problem of who starts first, the investment, and how the gains are shared. So it's a joint investment. It's quite complex to sell. So again, here, the selling process is really complicated, and it requires somebody who is really into the supply chain and with a very strong industrial power behind to provide such a technology. Speaking in market terms, of course, from the research point of view, this is, of course, a very convincing result, but the market is a different thing. The other business model that we had the opportunity to test is referred to the slot booking platform. This is a platform as well, and it's a platform to book cargo slots at an airport, and it was tested at the Brussels airport. And this platform is much simpler than the Plex because it has limited variety of users, and all of them are willing to enter because they are able to book their slots for bringing cargo to the airport. So it's simpler, and also it's already operating. I mean, during the project, we tested that the user acceptance was so good that already 90% of the users that should use it are there on the platform. And there is also very convincing ROI. So even this slot booking solution has to be offered to an airport using a project model. So for example, an IT vendor like Nalian that we have in the project goes there and sells then the project. And then the airport itself runs a platform and has to populate the platform with users. So they have the problem of running and populating a platform. The ROI is quite convincing, even just with the savings and the higher efficiency in using the slots in the airport. So the airport has a significant gain from simply using better the slots. And so they also make the users pay a fee. They have different fee structure, but that also should not be needed. I mean, you can run the platform and live on the gains that you have with the savings. Anyway, so in the initial phase, you can offer the platform for free, and this could be a strategy to force adoption. Going to the commercial exploitation, these are the actual solutions that will have come out of the project and that will be exploited on the market. As I said, Flux is very challenging for exploitation. It's still not available yet as a market solution, as it is more or less at tier L5, because of what we said. It's very critical that all the clusters users are involved, and also the financial viability is relying on user fees and nodes fees that tend to be a bit high. So even the margins are very small. So this is going to be critical. The next step should be to make a minimum viable product as soon as possible to further verify these assumptions and to go forward with the implementation, because I don't feel yet confident that this can be offered on the free market, on the real market. While for the intermodal solution from PTV Group, this is already available as a demonstrable solution for end users. It's already there and does not require much industrialization work, so more or less TRL 7. It is also a profitable solution for PTV as a technology provider, but to be there on the market, they also need partnership. In particular, somebody should act as service provider of the Intermodal, which is an intermodal planning service that should be available on the internet. There is a consultancy tool that's a quick check tool from Argosy. This also is ready. It's more or less TRL 8, so it's already in use at some early adopters, and it will be deployed by Argosy on scale on all their customers, and it allows to compare the options to merge shipments across using combining anonymous data. The animal use, we have already said that it needs much more work in terms of building an industrial value chain. So there must be an industrialization process that involves important companies in the field. That means large 3PLs, that means warehouse technology providers that actually should work on all the aspects that are still to be faced, like standardization, patenting, and of course, adoption. And so the TRL is more or less 4. Why? The slot booking is already there. It's verified. It's completely validated that it gives advantage to the airport in economic and it's viable. The users want to use it. And so the next steps are already running. It's already a commercial tool, and Nalian is proposing it on the market. And that's it. If you have questions, then we can go in more detail.
Thank you, Paolo. I'd like to give the floor to Stefano for the final presentation.
Thanks, Carlo. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Oh. So, sorry. So with this presentation, what I will try is to, let's say, put together or create a bridge between the project Cluster 2.0, the outcomes, but also all the knowledge and the research, because we saw some outcomes are very tangible. The company will go to the market with some concrete specific solution. Some have more work to do because the TRL is lower, and some more steps on the innovation research side are necessary. So here, what I'm trying is to show you, to mention what is happening also already beyond clusters in the same line, and what it will be coming next, thanks to some support from the European Commission in the innovation research line. So when we talk about the model shift, there was one of the big themes of cluster, one of the biggest ambition, but also has been, as Carlo and everybody, I guess he has been a big important aim for the last few years. We know that it's very challenging, and we know that is something that it may happen now thanks to the CO2 enabler, I will call it, thanks to the fact that the company will pay more attention to the CO2 emissions related to their goods. But also we need to have everything we need in place, and there was one approach. So we saw who are the drivers of this model shift, because if we look at clusters, let's say we were referring to the first part. The shipper have an active role. You saw in the presentation of another webinar probably the discussion about massification. So this creating a momentum, a group of shippers, some with more loads and some other with a smaller amount of loads, so that put together they can have enough demand, and they can fill rain in a constant way. But it's not the only way. So this is one. Then we see we are working a project, Mosaic Factor. We are in Coriolis, that is a Port of the Future project, and as in other activities, as in other current projects funded from the Commission, we see there is other possibilities, that is try to give advices, suggestion, a bit like the tool of PTV is allowing. Basically, the port, they take an active role on trying to inform the freight forwarder operating the ports on which would be a way to move goods in a more sustainable way, and obviously rail is one. And to always don't just tell them you should do it in a different way, but show them, look, there is this concrete lane, there is this concrete possibility that you can do it in this way. So thanks to these type of tools like Rotterdam and others have, and we are doing one in Coriolis in this line. But then what we are also doing there is, if you have the data and you can count on those data about actually where the containers are going, because in many times you have only the next movement, but on the final one, you can also go on what's happening around this port hub, what are the flows really, where are they going? And if you analyze them, you can suggest either the freight forwarder or the rail operator to readdress this. So basically, you can give visibility, and everybody can see opportunity. So the shippers, they already start seeing this. The other two, maybe they are less active, but it's not completely true, because there are some initiatives that start going on where more and more, like there's one from Spain to the north, when the rail operators start putting themselves the rail on the service, and basically wait for individual to book slots. So I'm saying, I make a silly example, but it's a bit like, should I rent my old flat to somebody, I have less problem, or should I rent it by days? Here in Barcelona, many people rent it by day because it's economically more interesting, but you need to be convinced that you have enough demand. And with the Barcelona flat, normally it's easier. Now with the COVID, is less obvious as well, but let's say that is not the same situation. So there are two in the end, which is the drivers. I would say all the three above, they are the drivers, and there is no necessary that is one or the other one, but you have to, you can bring the demand together, like massification the ship you are doing. You can gain more knowledge and make more visible, and this need data, obviously, and that's one of the biggest challenges about which is the small disaggregated demand. And even if you don't manage to aggregate it, it could be that there is enough market. But the two of them, of course, they're complementary and help each other, so it's not one or the other one. So this is something that we are doing now, and is going on in a few parallel projects, I'm aware as well. And I can predict that possibly there will be something in the near future, but we see later what we can foresee to have. So this is like in the line of the massification, and one of the aspects of the project. And then if we think about the LMNU, I suppose that most of you are aware of what physical internet is, but just in case, let's say a quick mention. Physical internet is meant to be a concept where, explained in a simple way, we have the goods flowing like. It started because we think about we wanted the goods flowing like data in the internet, and we don't care where they pass through, but we want to have a good service in a good way. And obviously the concept evolved, but the base is a bit this, and this is a kind of this is the more complete definition from Alice ETP, that is also related to cluster. Cluster has been, Cluster 2.0 has been done with a few of us. A good amount of partners are from Alice, and we had a very good relationship with Alice in supporting the project. So I mentioned this just in case a few of you don't know it, but I suppose the majority knows it. So if we think about this way where everything is more independent from the specific contract and more autonomous in a certain extended way, not just in autonomous vehicle way, then you can imagine us having the modular transport is more and more necessary, because it's less this company moving this container with its own, but you start need to share more infrastructure and combine things in a more dynamic way. So we are pretty convinced that there's still a lot to do in the next coming program for this kind of activity. Now, unfortunately, the program is no accessible, so we can see what has been suggested and know what is there. But what we can know for sure is the green call, because the green call draft has been published. So is the last call from the Green Deal, is the last, still part of H2020. It's closing in January. So the one published is still a draft, the one circulating is still a draft, but we start seeing this test. The Commission asks for feedback, and we think that is close to the final version. And what we see is like talking about optimization mechanism for multimodal access. So obviously the multimodal is still a very high topic. This topic deal with specifically either with airport or ports, so that two different topic in between the same. One project can go for airport or for ports, and they always deal with passenger and freight. So obviously you see the two elements combined, but looking from a logistic perspective, this is very relevant. And efficient logistic operation, modal shift. You could think that some projects could go in these directions, and also collaboration models are very relevant. So this is something that is published, and what we can see is what ALICE, thanks to the involvement of many companies, research center, university, has been promoted. That basically ALICE has the mandate to suggest to the Commission where to focus, to provide a roadmap for the technology, from the technological point of view, on the whole supply chain. And these are the few elements that ALICE proposed to the Commission. And particularly looking at the first one, the one in blue, automated operation in logistics node. We don't know exactly what it will, which shape it will have, but we have the feeling that the logistic nodes, as much as they are appearing in the Green Deal, they will be very much present in Horizon Europe, that is the next program. So this is a line where I would say we should all look together with high expectation in as soon as the program in the next few months will be available. And then something else that, of course, I cannot say that it will be exactly something that fit Cluster 2.0, but it's something that I suggest to have a look on, is the EUT on urban mobility. That is a different type of funding supported by the Commission, and is focusing on urban, but obviously the last mile is very related. We need to see how much it can fit the content we propose. And then there is this, we call it here CEF2, because basically I don't know how it will be called, but we imagine there will be a continuation of CEF, Connecting Euro facilities, in the next program, probably with a different name, but with the characteristic of funding more infrastructure. We know the Horizon Europe is funding more research innovation, CEF is funding more infrastructure. So we think, but we have no really visibility on the content, that modularization, logistic infrastructure could be supported, or at least it would be a good idea to look into this kind of instrument to find some support. And basically, what I tried to give an overview, hoping that there will be also collaboration between, not just in between clusters, but between clusters and the audience. That I think I'm sure there will be also much expertise on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Stefano. I will leave the floor to Anarita to know if there's any question from the participants.
Thank you, Carlo. No, I would like to remind the audience, in fact, that we're now open to receive your questions. So whenever you would like to type in some doubts or suggestions, even comments, we would be delighted to have a discussion now with you. So I would like to thank you all speakers because it was a very interesting insights that you gave to the audience, and I think there's so much to deepen and to dive in. But I have a question, if I may ask, that was stirred by Paolo's presentation, but it's actually addressed to anybody that wants to reply. So Paolo said that in order for these solutions, for classes 2.0 solutions to work, we would need several actors to implement them. So it's not just like something a single stakeholder decides to implement some solution overnight. It's a clusters effort. So it should be several stakeholders to take action and to decide to invest towards more sustainable logistics. So my question is, do you think this is the right time for this kind of brave decisions? I sometimes get the impression that COVID-19 has opened the way towards more disruption. So something that was unbelievable or an incredible, I don't know, 4 or 3 months ago, it's everyday life right now. So do you think that businesses and clusters and stakeholders will be more available for disruptive changes, or the other way around? Maybe they would be scared and they would not look into innovation right now.
Thank you, Narita. The question was to you, Paolo. Generally speaking, I'm really confident that European policies are still based on the Green Deal objectives, and that those objectives have to be taken into account in every business plan and business model of the smarter and most innovative logistic enterprises. That's why Cluster 2.0, like every R&D project within H2020 in transport and logistics, has to bring innovations ready to exploit, ready to be put on the market. The work done by Paolo in assessing business model was really huge, and fine-tuned all the assumption and the requirements that are necessary to bring Cluster 2.0 on the market. Paolo, please follow up with ending this sentence. With the mic on, please. Your mic is off. Still off.
Okay, I was not in control. Okay, now that is really an enormous question. Honestly, on the one side, there are changes, as Anarita was referring to, a changing in the environment and in the policy. And then there's going to be a huge amount of money going in certain directions from the Commission. We know those directions are the Green Deal, of course, others steered by the pandemic, and so this is going to affect the decisions of everybody. Then what we look more at, what we try to do in the project is look at the more micro aspects, so try to see the individual stakeholders' role in the innovation, in changing their business models to make this innovation real, and that was the the idea of finding these key assumptions that are anyway to be faced, because I'm of the old school, and I think that regardless of the policy money that you put in it, then there are the actual operators on the market that will decide whether or not this technology is for them, simply based on convenience, on the fact that it solves problem that they spend less or earn more than before. The problem of adoption is, especially in platforms like we have seen in some cases in our project, is a crucial one. We have also seen a proposed platform collapse during the project. I will not make names, but anyway, that was because of lack of adoption. Behind adoption, there are basic questions that have to be answered. And for me, in some cases, it is also important to find the right player on the market to answer those questions. So, for example, for animal use, there surely are out there companies probably now working in, for example, pallet rental services and such, that could take up this technology and find the right ways to make it adoptable for the end users. So this is the key thing that we should look at in the next projects, hopefully.
Thank you, Paolo. I think we have given a broad answer to Marita's question, but really the topic is huge, and we will see, apart from the objective, the coming out of objectives, what will be the real resources deployed to make the Green Deal, the Green Deal dream come true. If there's no other question, I'd like to thank you all for your speeches and presentation. Let me particularly thank Anna-Rita for the huge work in organizing all these workshops. This is the last one, but this series of webinars is part of the final event of Cluster 2.0. Due to COVID, we decided to split the final event into a series of webinars, and the effort, as every professional has realized during the lockdown and during this period, has become wider, larger, and more time consuming than holding a single event with coffee breaks and nice handshaking during a single day. Thank you very much. And thanks very much to all the audience. See you later. Let's hope to liaise in the near future. You have our addresses. You know how to reach us on cluster websites and social media. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.